Hello, welcome back to my channel. And happy Halloween if you're watching this video the day it comes out. Today I'm going to be doing my October wrap-up. This month, I think I read 11 books that weren't for videos, which in hindsight, I'm kind of regretting because I was just trying to organize my reading and stuff for November and December, and I realized I'm really behind. But it's okay because I read some really good stuff for myself and I had a really good time doing it. Some of these books were total wins and I had a lot of duds too, so it's gonna be some 5 stars and some 2 stars, but I'm excited to run through everything with you because there's some genres that I don't normally read in here, along with obviously some romance. So without further ado, let us get into the wrap up. The first book that I read this month, oh my god, Claimed by J.R. Ward. I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I was super disappointed in this book. It's the first book in her new Lair of the Wolven series, I think that's what it's called. And I was excited because I've actually enjoyed J.R. Ward's books outside of the Black Dagger Brotherhood, the Bourbon Legacy, whatever that was. I liked those books. They weren't necessarily the same quality as the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, but I think she's a talented writer and I was excited to give this one a try. It just didn't work for me in any possible regard. I learned this month though that I really don't fucking like books that have animals in them. I love animals, don't get me wrong. I do not like when animals are a part of books, specifically when they are experimented on or held captive or whatever. So in this book we have our main character Lydia, and she is working with wolves and trying to save them. There is this big conglomerate, this big hotel chain that is trying to, I think, tear down a ton of trees, kill the wolves' habitat, kill the wolves most likely, and, you know, just build their hotel. Lydia obviously is against this. She works with the wolves. I don't really know exactly what her role at this nonprofit is because she's not a vet. She is not a scientist, I don't think either, but she's there because she likes wolves. So she is doing everything in her power she can to save them, but some kind of weird shit is happening too. The, I think, vet that works at this nonprofit, he kind of goes a little bit off the wall. And then we also have Daniel who comes in to, I guess, do some handyman jobs around the, I don't know if it's a compound or reserve, what they're calling it, but where Lydia works and where the wolves are. He comes and he helps them, I guess, take care of the property or something like that. I don't really know. Daniel and Lydia are supposed to fall in love, and I didn't like either of them. I didn't like either of them as characters, to be honest. Lydia was irritating. Daniel had no personality whatsoever, and they had this kind of insta chemistry, which is fine sometimes in paranormal. I can overlook it, especially if it's a fated mate situation, but this clearly was not that, and there's just so much that didn't work about this book, but I don't want to spoil it for people who are very interested in it and do want to read all of JR's, books. It just wasn't good. It wasn't good, and if you were looking for a werewolf shifter romance, this is absolutely not fucking it. You do learn about that kind of at the very end of the book, but it's not the character who you think it's going to be. It's just, it's not a good time. I wouldn't recommend it. I won't be carrying on with the series, sadly. Next up is a book that I really, really, really enjoyed. It is Razor Blade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This is a book that was definitely not on my radar before endeavoring to take on this video that I'm doing for December, but I picked this book up first, and I am so glad that I did, because I think had I not picked this one up first, I don't know if I would have carried on with the video. So grateful for this book for a lot of reasons, that being a big one, but also it was just a fantastic story. So this book is about our 2 main characters, Ike and Buddy. Ike is a black man, Buddy is white, and their respective sons were married, in a relationship, had a daughter together, and were unfortunately brutally murdered, and the cops can't seem to figure out what exactly happened and what went down, and they really don't have any interest in kind of figuring out who murdered their sons. So Ike and Buddy team up to seek vengeance and to figure out who exactly killed them, and along the way they figure out a lot of things about themselves, about their sons, about forgiveness, about racism in America, about homophobia in America. Oh my god, it was so powerful and not preachy at all, and I just feel like this is a book that so many people could get so much from. It does have that sort of mystery thriller feel to it. It is gritty, it is gruesome. There's definitely a lot of violence in this book. I think this book does such an excellent job at pointing out the hypocrisy of certain actions and showing people how they might just have the wrong thoughts, right? How they fucked up, how they can do better going forward. So good. It was so good. I don't think I would have picked this up on my own, mostly because I feel like the cover just doesn't really give you a lot, and the description, it didn't really totally jump out to me, but upon reading it, I mean, this is a phenomenal book, and I would highly recommend you pick it up. Amazing. I'm so glad I read this book, and I'm really excited for y'all to see that video in December. Fingers crossed I can finish all the books for it, but I'm about halfway there, and there have been some real gems, so I'm glad I read this one. Go check it out. So the next book that I read this month was another one that took me by surprise. It was another one that was not on my radar, and it is another one that is for that December video. It is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. Oh my god, I love this book. I ended up giving it 5 stars, and I just really solidified my feelings on loving mysteries way more than thrillers. Now I kind of feel like I need to seek out more mysteries because this just so worked for me. And I think think part of that is that I read it at the perfect time and like the perfect situation. I was driving back from my parents' house to Austin. This book is set partially in Austin, and I got to listen to it all in one sitting on the road. Oh, it was so brilliant. It was so brilliant. So the book is about our main character, Hannah, and she is kind of going through a tough time because her husband, recent kind of husband, I guess they've only been married like a year or two, goes missing. Owen goes missing, and he leaves behind his daughter, Bailey. And Hannah is given this task of taking care of Bailey, keeping Bailey safe, and also potentially figuring out what happened to Owen. He doesn't really want to be found. He doesn't really want anyone to know where he is, but Hannah is determined and hell-bent on finding her husband, who she loves a ton. And I love this story because it was so twisty and interesting. There's so many things that you assume from the beginning. You're like, oh, you know, Owen's just a bad guy. He definitely fucked up. He definitely is just like taking his money and running. And then the more the story unfolds, you understand the complexity of all of these characters' lives and how they're interplaying. It was just, I loved it. I really love this book. A lot of the reviews for this book are kind of like middle of the road and or this book is boring, and I totally get where you're coming from because it's not a thriller. It's not fast-paced. It's not something that I think will appeal to a lot of people. But I think why I liked this book so much was that it really, at its core, it is a love story. There is a big love story at the heart of this book, and I won't tell you kind of what that love story is, or even if it's a romantic one, but love is at the heart of this book, and loved it. I did cry a little bit at the end. It's a book that I was considering purchasing a physical copy of, if that tells you anything. I would say definitely pick it up if you are interested in kind of like a slower paced mystery. This book is not overly long, but I mean, it does have kind of like a plotting sort of plot, but I liked it. I thought it was good. 10 out of 10. Great time. The next book that I read, just kind of like a middle of the road read for me, but for some reason I just keep picking up the books in the series. It's Archangels Enigma by Nalini Singh. I give this book 3 stars. This one is the book about Nasser and Andromeda, I want to say her name is. Yes. I thought it was fine. I kind of feel that way about all of these books. I just really enjoy the narration, and anytime that I'm going on a road trip from Austin to Houston, I always download one of these and then just listen because it's a really enjoyable experience. I think I listened to this one on the way to Houston, and it was perfectly serviceable. It was fun to listen to. I liked it when I read it, but it's not a book that I'll be thinking about for years to come. I think really my issue with Nalini Singh's writing is that she does a fantastic job at plot and at kind of connecting the plot throughout all of her books. Great job at that, but I don't tend to love her love stories. There's always kind of this like happy for now element that doesn't totally work for me. I like a really strong happily ever after, especially in a paranormal. So, you know, it was fine. It wasn't something that I necessarily totally recommend, but I do like these books, so I don't know. I think this is like book 8 in the series too, so I'm like pretty far. I'm kind of committed. I feel like I gotta finish it out, but it's nothing that I'm like in love with. Okay, Crystal, if you're watching this video, look away now because I'm gonna be talking about Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas. Okay, this was a disappointment. I mean, like, I don't know how else to say it. I didn't like this book. It was about Sarah and Derek, and the setup for this book was so promising. I was so excited about it because Sarah is this semi-wallflower, but she also has a little bit of, like, zest for life. She is from this small country town, and she comes to London because she wants to see this notorious gaming hell run by Derek Craven. I don't even know if she's, like, specifically seeking Craven's gaming hell, but she definitely needs to go to one, get that experience, and then write about it because she has a pretty famous book that she's written about this fictional sex worker. She is wanting to write the sequel, but she doesn't really know what to write it about or if she has the right like experience, I guess, to be able to write that fully. So she ends up going to this gaming hell and trying to like kind of infiltrate and kind of see what's up. And I love that idea. I think that's so fun, especially kind of taking that like traditional wallflower thing and flipping it on its head, making it a little bit more interesting. And then Derek Craven is this notorious rake, but he also has this sort of like damaged hero past. And I think that appeals to a lot of people, and it certainly appeals to me. I love a good damaged hero. He was someone who I think grew up an orphan, kind of grew up on the streets, and was able to kind of claw his way out of the gutter, as it were, and become this, you know, big gaming hell dude. Which, again, I love that idea. I love an opposites attract romance, but it was all of the little, like, ancillary bits and the actual plot of this book that really, really didn't make it work for me. So I think the biggest thing, and I don't think this is a spoiler to say, at the beginning of the book, Derek is with a woman. I think he considers her a mistress. She is married to a duke or something like that. She's unsatisfied in that marriage, and so she ends up sleeping with Derek, and whenever he breaks it off because he's no longer interested, she ends up trying to kill him. Like, that's a big subplot of this book, which I didn't really find very appealing. I don't expect that my hero and heroine will be like celibate or anything before they get together, but I just didn't like that inclusion. And then on top of that, the dynamic between Sarah and Derek sort of devolves for me. It turned from something that I thought was sweet opposites attract to, oh my god, you're so much better than all these other girls because you're not a slut or whatever. I didn't really like that. Derek always goes for the ones that are easy, and Sarah's not easy. I just, I don't know. I didn't like it. I didn't like that dynamic. I don't think we need to pit women against each other to make the heroine ultimately like the one for him. I don't know. I got that vibe from it, and it wasn't really for me. Also, the epilogue of this book, I don't know how much I want to say, but I'm just going to say the word lactation and we're going to move on. Now we can do another 180. So I'll talk to you guys about a book that I fucking loved, and it is Baking Me Crazy by Carla Sorensen. This is book 1 in the Love at First Sight series, which is part of Penny Reed's Green Valley series. So if you have read the Winston Brothers series and you really liked that kind of like down home Tennessee vibe, you're going to like this series. It's set in the same world and it is set at the Donner Bakery. I think all of the books are set at the Donner Bakery. I loved this. I thought this was so charming. If you were looking for a hero who is head over fucking heels for the heroine before she even knows that she likes him, I think you're gonna enjoy this. I love a good pining romance, y'all know that, and this definitely delivered. So it's about our main characters, Levi and Jocelyn, and Levi is a hero who you can't help but love. He is a physical therapist from first sight. I mean, I guess it's called a Love at First Sight novel. He's really, really enamored with Jocelyn. He thinks she is absolutely beautiful, and I want to say he meets her at like a wheelchair basketball kind of game or something like that. Just totally into her, but at the time, I think he asked Jocelyn on a date or something, and she says no because she is recently disabled and she's not completely comfortable in her kind of new life situation. She just doesn't really, she's not ready for it. And so they decide to take it slow. They decide to just be friends instead. And Jocelyn kind of completely forgets about the fact that Levi wanted to date her, and he ends up just becoming friends with her. And they are friends for, I want to say like 5 or 6 years before anything turns romantic. I loved watching Levi just be so into her and kind of trying to figure out a way to show Jocelyn that he's really into her. I just loved it. I thought it was fucking awesome. I also thought the representation was pretty good too. I mean, I can't speak to that obviously, like I am not disabled, I'm not in a wheelchair, but really liked the way that it was handled here. If you're looking for something good, I'd recommend it. I will say, contrary to the title or like series name, Love at First Sight, it's not like his love for her is based just on her looks, or like Levi doesn't get to know her. Like there's definitely a romance and attention built there, so I wouldn't worry too much about the Love at First Sight title, but I thought this was awesome, and I'm just surprised this isn't like rated higher. I really enjoyed this book, so 4 stars, loved it. Okay, I definitely didn't plan it this way, but it seems like we're having like really high highs and really low lows back to back. That's just kind of how my reading month was. I'm going in reading order here. I read The Wedding Day Disaster by Avery Flynn, which I gave 2 stars to. I really wanted to like this book because I read Back in the Burbs by Avery Flynn and Tracy Wolfe, I want to say. I thought that was really charming. I think I gave that book 4 stars. This one, on the other hand, did not work. It is compared to The Hating Game because there is kind of a similar dynamic built here, but it couldn't be farther from that. So this book is about our main character, who I cannot remember the name of, Hadley, and she is tasked with going to her sister's wedding, but of course she does not want to go alone because that's so lame to go to a wedding without a date. So she asks one of her best male friends to go with her, but instead of going with her, he ends up sending his twin brother and Hadley's arch nemesis in his stead. So she's having to go on kind of like a wedding date, I guess you could say, with this guy she hates, who I can't remember the name of, and I didn't write down in my notes. The reason this book didn't work for me is not because I dislike an enemies to lovers situation, y'all know I'm all about that, but I think it needs to be built on something beyond thinking that your brother's best friend is a gold digging. Yeah. Throughout this book, we get so much illusion and also like verbalization from our hero about how he thinks that Hadley is just after his brother's money and that there's no way that she could just want to be friends with him, and this persists over the course of the story, and I don't think he tells her until like midway into the book that this is why he does not like her. But I didn't like it. I did not like this book. I feel like in The Hating Game, when there's that initial first kiss, you just feel this like shock to your heart, and you're also kind of like, I was about to say sweaty in the pants, but you catch my drift. This one just made me infuriated. Like they have this kiss in a coat closet, I want to say, and then he proceeds to betray her immediately. It's just like not, it just wasn't it, okay? I'm just gonna leave it at that. Didn't like it, and I gave it 2 stars. Moving on. Next up is a book that I read for that December video, and you might be asking yourself, like, why are you telling us about these if we're gonna have to listen to you talk about them again? And that's fair, but it's not gonna be a vlog setting, so like, I figure it's okay to talk about them now. Book I didn't like, This Close to Okay by Lisa Cross Smith, 2 stars. Mess. Just mess. Feel like this book is probably written for someone. I just cannot, for the life of me, determine who that would be. This story is about Tally and Emmett. Tally is, I want to say, like 40-ish. She's recently divorced, and her ex-husband has impregnated another woman. That is really upsetting Tally because she is someone who wanted to get pregnant but couldn't, or something like that. Really heartbreaking, really shitty circumstances. One day, Tally is walking along, or maybe she's in her car, I think she's probably in her car, and she sees Emmett, who looks like he is about to jump from a bridge. I think he's like in his 20s maybe. So she stops and she helps him, and she convinces him to come home with her, and he ends up living with her for a while, and they kind of form this relationship, I guess you could say. Okay, so Tally is also a therapist, or like some sort of of mental health counselor in some way. But her behavior does not really lead you to believe that she is one. The way that she romanticizes Emmett's mental health and the way that she lusts after him, it just didn't feel appropriate given the circumstances. I mean, just the sheer fact that she's bringing him home to like live with her for a while feels a little bit weird, and then kind of the boundaries she crosses, it just didn't feel very professional. Granted, like, she's not his therapist, but as someone who is a professional, you would assume she would know boundaries a little bit better, and she didn't really do so good with boundaries. On top of that, Emmett also doesn't understand boundaries and ends up interfering in Tally's relationship with her ex-husband and ends up like writing to him in her voice. Like, he ends up catfishing her ex-husband. It's just bizarre. It was a bizarre book. I literally just didn't understand the point of it either. Like, it was not good commentary on mental health or how that should be handled. It also wasn't a love story in any sense of the word. I just didn't understand it. Maybe I am just ill-equipped to understand things that are complex. I mean, that's valid, but it didn't work for me, okay? And I gave it 2 stars. To be fair, all of my friends DNF this book. I was scrolling through Goodreads. I always like to look through Goodreads after I finish a book to see what the overall consensus was by my friends, and I think I only saw one friend that finished it and they gave this book 2 stars as well, so I feel validated, vindicated, and yeah. If it sounds interesting to you, obviously pick it up, but it just didn't work for me in any sense of the word. The next book I read was one that's just totally fucking bizarre and perfect for October. I read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. I ended up giving this book 3 stars, although frankly I have no idea how to rate this book. It is a 100-ish page book, horror for sure, and it is about 2 women who meet online in this like LGBT type forum chat room, their bizarre relationship that unfolds. I will say I appreciated how fucking weird this book is, was very interested to see what happened, and I was fairly satisfied with the ending of the story. I feel like it all came full circle and it felt like a complete like little novella. It was also really disgusting, so I don't know how to feel about it. I don't think this was like the best thing I've ever read. I don't think this is the worst thing that I've ever read. I feel like if you're even a little bit interested in it, maybe pick it up, but definitely be forewarned, there is fairly gratuitous, I would say, animal abuse and or like harm to animals. I don't know what the word for that is, but I don't know how to feel about this one. I'm glad I read it, I guess, so like now I know what the hype's about, but I'm also semi-scarred for life, so moving on. Another kind of middle of the road Lisa Kleypas book. I ended up reading Devil in Winter and I gave it 3 stars. Now, I know this is everyone's favorite Lisa Kleypas book, and honestly, I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. The characters were fun, but they weren't fun enough to overcome the issues with the plot. This book is about Evie and Sebastian. They're introduced in the previous novels in the series. I didn't read the second book, so I feel like I missed out on some of the kind of tension and conflict between Sebastian and the heroine of the last novel. I want to say he like kisses her and does like rogue-like shit to her, but he's easily redeemed in this book. Evie is trying to escape her really shitty family, and so she propositions Sebastian one night and is like, hey, can we get married, and I also will get my family's inheritance if we do this? Like, it's kind of a win-win situation. And Sebastian's totally into it, totally along for the ride, and so they marry. They end up going to see Evie's sick father. Things progress from there. Holy shit though, the plot, so boring. Who thought that this was a good idea for a book? Like, were we reading the same book? Was I reading the same book that you were reading? Because I just don't understand what was interesting about this. I think maybe I don't like gaming hells. I think that could be it, because this one and Dreaming of You have that like in common. Not my thing. Didn't enjoy it. I mean, I liked the romance between Evie and Sebastian like just fine. I thought they were cute. I like how into Evie Sebastian was, but I need a decent plot in a romance. Like, if there's going to be a plot, it needs to be interesting. I don't want to just be sitting at this fucking gaming hell bored out of my goddamn skull. Moving on. A book that was not boring at all. Okay. I picked this up on a whim and I like kind of am into it. I'm not going to try to convince you to read it, but also maybe. Okay. Ruthless Crown by Amanda Richardson. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. In hindsight, no, I'm not going to give it 4 stars. It's not a 4-star read, but this is probably my favorite reverse harem book that I've ever read. It is about our main character, Briar, and her mom has recently remarried, and she is going to go live with her mom, stepdad, and new stepbrother. Of course, like, this is a classic new adult bully romance, reverse harem romance setup. It very much is that, but I feel like the writing of this book really makes everything feel more realistic and a little bit less cheesy and over the top than a lot that I've read. Like, just the mindset that Briar has and kind of the actions that our characters take, they just don't feel stupid. And I really liked the relationship too between Briar and her mom. It felt very authentic to me, and also, I don't know, I just feel like the parents in a lot of these books seem so neglectful, and I didn't get that vibe from Briar's mom, so I liked that. Obviously, Briar's stepbrother has 3 super hot best friends, and all 4 of them are lusting after Briar, but also kind of bullying her at the same time. And eventually there's some like steamy steamy sex scenes that happen. There's an interesting kind of plot twist and or, I was gonna say climax, cliffhanger at the end of this book. So it was fun. It was an enjoyable book. I don't know that I totally love how the topic of assault was handled. Briar was assaulted, but someone in her past, and she's kind of running from that and is healing from that. And there's talk of therapy and stuff, which I appreciated, but it's also kind of used as like a plot twist as that person comes back into her life at the end of the book. And I don't know how I totally feel about that. Nothing happens, it's a cliffhanger, and so I don't know if I'm going to hate it if I pick up the second book. Like, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. But the sex scenes in this book were great. I appreciated the play on reverse harem, I guess you could say, in it. I feel like a lot of the time with reverse harem, it just feels a little bit weird that everybody is straight in the books, and in this, that's not the case, and I appreciated that. I feel like I'm not doing a very good job selling this book, but it was fun, it was hot, and overall, like, it was a good reverse harem time. Is it gonna win any awards? No, but it doesn't need to because it's just a fun, silly time. I think this book was relatively short as well, which I appreciated, so that was the last romance I read this month. And now we can talk about the last book that I read this month, which I know a lot of people love. I didn't. Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. I gave this book 2 stars. I just didn't like this book. I understand why so many people enjoyed this book, why so many people are like buzzing about this book, but it just didn't work for me. I think the biggest thing was not so much that the book was unbelievable, which it absolutely and totally was. It's that I really don't appreciate some of the themes and topics explored in this book. Now, I think it's totally dependent on you and your circumstances, what you're into in thrillers. I know some people like really over the top when it comes to like the themes and the subject matter explored. Like if you like Pretty Girls by Clarence Lauder, I think this might be something you're into. Not the same topics at all, but the same like over the topness. I don't like books with medical trauma. I am finding this was really heavy on the medical trauma, and I also just really don't like books with abducted women. Now, I have read books in the past that have like an abduction plotline that I haven't totally hated, but more and more I'm finding that I just don't really like books with those themes. So the whole like medical trauma plus abduction just didn't really sit well with me, and I just feel like that coupled with the unbelievability just made it something that I couldn't really enjoy. If those things had been included and then the like plot twists were really clever and it was all very subtle, I think I might have been able to overlook it, but those 2 things combined, just not a book for me. And I feel bad saying that. This was definitely like a very personal thing. I don't think that this book is in any way like super poorly written. I just didn't like it. That's it. I didn't enjoy it. So those are the 11 books that I read. 11 books, 12 books? Ooh, I don't actually know. 11 or 12 books that I read in October that weren't for vlogs. I had an interesting reading month. I'm glad that I ended up reading all of these books. I feel like these are books that have been like piquing my interest over the past like year or so, and I just have been kind of putting off reading because I've had other stuff to do, but I'm glad that I got to them. I don't know, and I know I said this last month, but I really don't know for November how many books I'm going to be reading that are not for upcoming videos. I'm just so determined to get stuff read for December, and I just don't know if I'm gonna have time for anything else. If I do, it's probably gonna be like a Madison Kate. I got the audiobooks from my library and they're surprisingly excellent, so I feel like I'm gonna read those soon. I do have a couple of thrillers that I'm midway through that I'm not reading for videos that I might talk about in a wrap-up if I end up finishing them. So I don't know. If I do a wrap up, it's gonna be like maybe 5 books. So anyway, thanks for listening to me babble for however long this video is. Love y'all so much. I have, I think, a vlog coming next Sunday, and then you're gonna be getting 2 videos from me every week leading up to December, and then you're getting so many videos from me, like way too many videos from me. So anyway, love y'all so much. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate ya. Leave a comment down below letting me know what your favorite book was this month so I can put it on my own TBR, but until next Sunday.